let me tell you a little bit about the soul. The soul is not physical. It has no physical structure. Whatever physical structure is associated with those who have visions of departed ones are only because of the need to communicate to the human being on the human being's level. And therefore the soul is manifested and appears as if it has the physical structure and is still clothed. But the soul itself is not a physical structure. It has no height, width, or length. Does not take up any space. Does not have any color to it. It is an awareness, a consciousness, a pure consciousness that has the abilities of rationality and principles of conduct, principles of relationship. Essentially, the soul reflects God's manifestation in the world. God relates to the world with intellect, with love, with justice, and so on. The soul too relates to its body and to those around its body with its intellect and with its principles. But the soul, the essence of the soul, is a non-ethereal, non-material existence. A light of the soul enters the brain and expands from the brain and becomes the physical awareness of the person. And this process is likened to the process of a thin band of light diffused into different colors, different shapes, different angles, utilizing mirrors. Imagine you had a 1,000,000-watt bulb. It'd be enormous. We couldn't look at it. In order to use the light, you'd have to only allow a thin ray of light from this 1,000,000-watt bulb, which, by the way, also provides all different types of rays. So you'd have to filter them from the ultraviolet and the X-rays and gamma rays. The harmful rays you'd have to, or the harsh rays, you'd have to filter them as well. And you'd have to open up a tiny little hole behind a black curtain, and that would allow one tiny band of light, intense light, to enter. And then you would take mirrors and reflect that tiny band of light in the different directions, and you would lighten up the room because this is a very, very powerful light. But it's only a tiny fraction of the light that was originally there at the other side of the black curtain. So it is with our awareness. Our awareness is like a tiny little sliver of light coming from a huge, huge, bright, multi-million-watt light. In fact, it's a lot more than millions of watts, because the soul, as I mentioned, is compared to us unlimited. And so our soul, or our life force, is a narrow band of consciousness that enters into our brain. And it comes from a source that's beyond the brain. And those people who've had out-of-body experiences or different exercises in meditation know what I'm talking about. The soul, the essence of the soul, is above the body, above the physical parameters of the body. Doesn't mean above it physically, but above it in the spiritual sense, It's beyond it and envelops it and senses it, but does not enter directly into it. That is the essence of the soul, and it is the consciousness, the band of light that enters the brain that we feel is our life force. And that band of consciousness extends to every part of the body. It's reflected by mirrors. We call them nerves, and they come to every part of the body and illuminate every part of the body with awareness, with sensitivity. But the seat of the band of the soul's consciousness is within the brain. But that's not the soul. That's just the light revealed from the soul. And so we all have a divine light that's found around our bodies. And our consciousness is a thin band of light, narrow band of light, that gives us our cognitive abilities and the abilities to think and to do and to enliven every part of our body. When we die, it is this thin band of consciousness that is judged, for the essence of the soul itself never enters the body. And this thin band of light has different levels to it. And we'll talk about those levels in coming lessons. But every one of us is born with a divine consciousness, a consciousness that is above the physical world and does not have any physical parameters, but is sent by God to illuminate our body and through our body the world that we come into contact with.